everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and we are in the finale for Primal, The Awakening from Reggie Games. If you haven't checked out my rules overview and part number 1 of this solo playthrough, or the setup video for this, or maybe even the unboxing of the Kickstarter components, I'm going to link to the entirety of the Kickstarter Preview Series in the top right-hand corner right now. You can go check that out if you want to find out more about how we got to where we're currently at right now. Moving into, as you can see on the round track, round number 5. Our monster is going to go ahead and gain 2 struggle tokens. We're going to remove the lowest number behavior card, which is the green one, and replace it with the red one on the top of the behavior deck. So Myra has the aggro token. She'll be starting things off. One thing you've likely noticed from the first part to this video is that I've gone ahead and shuffled this deck. Normally you would leave this deck until you're ready to pull a card before shuffling it. To make my life easier, I've shuffled it in advance. The one thing to note is the card that was in the discard last for this deck, just before I shuffled it, was a 2. The reason why that matters is, as you can see, Myra has a lot of damage on her. Currently up to 6, and I can only have 8 damage before she gets KO'd. So I am eyeing this attrition deck and hoping at some point the number 1 is going to be on top, because if I use a potion at that particular point, I can reduce my damage down by 4, which would be huge. If I use it without having a discard card on top of number 1, then I only get 2 healing. So I'm kind of waiting and buying my time here, but it's getting a little dangerous. So we're starting off with her turn. Let's go ahead and see what she's got in hand and what she's capable of pulling off. Unfortunately, Myra is going to have to wait a second, as the beast has a behavior card which triggers when someone is sitting in the rear section at the beginning of their turn. So we're going to flip that card right now and find out what nastiness is coming our way. Alright, so we have tail whipping here, and thank goodness there is no keyword on this card that mentions Firestorm, because our current peril card, which is on stance 2, states when a behavior card with the Firestorm trait is triggered, immediately place a fire token on the front sector. So in other words, if the Firestorm trait keyword was on this card, which would normally show up at the very top of this black area, if there was any keywords on the card, then we would deal with whatever the peril is saying here. So we don't have to deal with that, but it's worth mentioning to keep an eye out for that, because that's going to cause us some pain. But what do we have to deal with right now on this behavior? Players in the rear section suffer 3 damage. That's not good, unless they have a green card in hand. If the hit the tail objective card is complete, which it is, remember we've hit the tail twice already to this point, then this card has no effect and this monster suffers 5 damage instead. So this is a perfect time to have this card come up and be resolved. Now you'll notice at the bottom there is a spending of struggle tokens no matter whether the effect is good or bad for the monster. It states to avoid damage, players must discard a green instead. We don't have to worry about this, because this second section right here basically negates the top one, which then again negates the bottom one. And you can see the monster will burn the 2 struggle tokens. We do place 5 damage on it. We are in the clear. I've gone ahead and replaced the behavior card. We have another red one in the queue. That is not good, because if we make an attack, we're going to be resolving 2 red cards, which is pretty vicious. We did put the extra 5 damage on, so we're up to a total of 11. In the second stance of the monster, we need 24. So we're basically halfway there, which is pretty good. So we're about halfway down the rounds or so at this point. So we're doing pretty good timing-wise. We've caught up much better in rounds 3, 4, and 5 than we have in the prior or earlier rounds of the game in terms of how much damage we need to take this thing out. But we are still kind of on the wire right now. We need to kind of get ahead of things by putting more damage on. The other thing to make note of is I've taken away the 2 struggle tokens for that last behavior card as well. Now, as most of us remember from the last video, we unlocked her mastery, Myra's mastery called Burst, which allows her at the start of her turn to go ahead and volley 2, which means we pull 2 cards off the top of the deck and we hope and cross our fingers that they are red. If they're both red, we're going to be putting some nice damage on this thing, and because this is happening as an attack that isn't with a red card being placed, the red cards in the behavior sequence up top, or not the sequence, but the behavior monster board, are not going to trigger, which is pretty awesome. So let's see how this goes. We missed the first one. Let's see how it happens on the second. 2 misses. We're not doing so good on those volleys. Myra definitely wants to move on her turn. She's going to go ahead and discard Quick Shot because when I discard Quick Shot from my hand, I gain 1 volley, which means I'm going to be able to pull a card off the top just like I tried before to see if it's red. Come on. Yes, finally. Okay, so volley allows you to do your weapon damage against the enemy, so that's an additional 2 damage. The monster at this point is now at a total of 13 damage out of 24 that we need. Not bad at all. Next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pay, or I should say discard this card in order to gain the stamina on it. So we'll place this over here, and we're going to place long range in here. So what's going to happen is, while long range is on the top of your discard pile, you cannot suffer damage from attrition. I'm literally going to stop my turn right here so that when this is discarded from my sequence, it's going to sit on top of my discard pile, and the attrition pull is going to do nothing to us, especially if it's a 2 or a 3, which is good. I don't want her getting hurt anymore. Even better, I have 2 cards left in my hand, and I have another long range card I can use to keep her in good health. The other way I'm going to try to prevent her being knocked out is by moving her, which I did at the beginning of my turn by discarding a blue card and allowing me to do that volley. I moved her from this section into this section over here, which has a plant that at the beginning of her next turn, she's going to be able to heal 1. That's going to end Myra's turn right there. I have 2 cards in hand, so at this point we're going to discard all the cards in sequence, putting this long range card on top of my discard, which is great for when I do my attrition check in a second. We're also going to gain a stamina token because I have 2 cards left in hand, so I'll be gaining that. And we need to draw up to 5 cards as well. And then we'll need to change the orientation based on the aggro token, which still currently sits with Myra. So let's go ahead and draw these up. 1, there's a red, that's good. Another red, and a blue. As I mentioned, now the monster is going to start facing the individual with the aggro token. That is going to be Myra up top. And that's going to wrap up Myra's turn. We can move over to Darian. The other thing I want to mention for Myra that I forgot is I definitely want to pull an attrition card right now, as I always have to do this check at the end of her turn. And even though I have long range in my discard pile that says I won't suffer any damage, the card still gets pulled anyway. So pulling the card, it's a 2. Regardless of what this is, I don't take any damage, but it's nice to see that a 2 was removed from the deck. Get those 2s and 3s out of here. Alright, so Darian is up next. He is currently in this section with the ability to take advantage of a plant there if he decides to stay in that sector, or I can move him out. And I don't think I really want to be adding threatened tokens to him, or a threatened token I should say. I'd rather just move out of that space, I think, and maybe go to the back section. Basically, this monster is vulnerable on both flanks and the rear section right now, but not from the front. Darian does not want to take that threatened token, so I'm going to go ahead and discard this card from hand, which is called Berserk. It's a very high cost card, but I have a couple of the reds I'm going to use instead. He's going to move from his position over here. Darian's now in position behind the monster. First thing I'm going to do is spend one of my 2 stamina tokens on Darian to play Empty Fade into my sequence. So this is now spent. It says you may immediately play a card with the slash trait from your hand without paying its stamina cost, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and play this red one here. The downside of this is that there's 2 red behavior cards that are going to trigger after this. So first off, we get our weapon damage currently. So at this point in time for Darian, that is going to be 3 damage, but you can see if I can get another red card beside this one, I'll get an additional 3 damage, and it's the weapon level times 3. So it's still going to be 3, but that would boost it up a little bit more to 6. So for now, in terms of what I resolve, it's just the 3 extra damage on the enemy. No aggro token change, and we're going to be doing some behavior reactions now. We're now up to a total of 16 damage out of 24 we need to go to the next stance, but we're triggering each of these, and I can choose which one I want to trigger first. I have no idea. They're both 4, so it makes it even tougher to remember what's underneath them. First one I pulled is called Quick Aggression. It says Claw. Thank goodness it doesn't have the Firestorm keyword there. That'd be bad. The active player suffers 1 damage unless they have a yellow in their sequence. No, I do not. I currently have a yellow in my hand, so that's not going to help me. So that is going to be 1 damage coming through, and thankfully we've already burned all the struggle tokens during Myra's turn, so it won't be boosted by 1. I knew it wasn't going to be pretty forever. Now we've got a really interesting card here. This is Dragon Wrath. The very top says keyword Firestorm. Remember on the peril card it says when a behavior card with the Firestorm trait is triggered, immediately place a fire terrain on the front sector. No downtime for our heroes. We got fire right in the front sector. Thankfully, it doesn't actually do any damage to Myra right now unless another one is placed. But the card that we just pulled, now that we've dealt with the peril on the top from the keyword, the next thing it states below is that this monster is going to immediately turn to the active player, and the active player right now is Darian, so it's going to do a complete 180 and then place a fire token where Darian is as well. Well, that escalated quite quickly, and as you can see on the bottom of the card, which might be a little bit small, but it says, a struggle token, the active player suffers 1 fire damage unless they have a green in their sequence. It's okay, they can't pay this struggle token right now, as the monster doesn't have any. So overall, that wasn't all that bad. I thought we'd actually take a lot of hits there, but it didn't pan out that way. The only thing bad now is we've got 2 new behavior cards in the row, and both of them are nasty because one is going to trigger on red again if we make an attack. The other one over here is going to trigger if any of the other ones trigger. So basically, if we make an attack, the red will trigger, and then this one right here is going to trigger, which is not nice. And if that wasn't bad enough for me, the next nasty thing is the monster is now facing Darian, which means he's no longer vulnerable, which means, I was trying so hard to get this second red card out, which would have dealt, actually I calculated up, 12 damage is what it would have done if I had been able to place this in combination with my great sword abilities, putting counters on the multiple attacks, plus being able to take advantage of the benefit of the double slash. All kinds of things I'm missing out on right now because that monster is now focused on me in the front section. And on top of the fact that there is a fire in my space, I can't play anything else into my sequence, so I am going to stop my turn right there with 2 cards in hand. Sequence has been discarded. I also gain a stamina token, meaning I'll be at 2 again going into the next turn. That's great. We're going to refill my hand. I currently have Outpace and Heavy Clash right now. Let's see what else we get. We got Reactive Guard. That's a nice one. We got Swift. And finally, Quick Thrust. At this point in time, the monster is not going to move at all because it's already facing the individual with the aggro token. We're moving into end of round right now. Fires will be reduced, so thankfully both of these fires are going down. And something else going down is the round track. As we move into the 6th round, we're also going to place 2 struggle tokens back on the monster. Next up, we're going to discard the lowest behavior card in the row, and that is going to be the blue one on the far right. And guess what's coming in? That end of round nasty behavior card. We're all squared away for the behavior cards. You'll notice, though, that the deck has depleted, so the next time we need to replace, we are going to be adding a struggle token to the monster. Based on the current battle terrain area, we've got fire in the space with Darian. I don't really want to be in there because I don't want to take a threatened token. So I'm going to actually move to this sector over here, which again will have a +1 on damage, and that is a vulnerable side. I've got some interesting plans to put some damage on this thing, but it's going to trigger some behavior cards for sure. First off, I'll discard a card from hand in order to pay for that movement. So Heavy Clash is going away. We're going to move ourselves over to this side of the monster, and from here, I'm now going to start playing cards into my sequence. First card going into my sequence is Reactive Guard. It's a defensive card. It costs 1 stamina to play, which I've now paid. Aggro token doesn't move, but even if it was red, it wouldn't move anyway because Darian is already the aggro player. And you can see right here, Reactive Guard is going to trigger an ability once we place a red card beside it, which I plan to do. So I'm going to go ahead right now with a very cool combination. So I'm going to play a card called Outpace into my sequence. And how am I going to pay this? Well, I'm going to be using 1 stamina token to pay for it, and for the other point of stamina I need to pay, I'm going to actually discard Quick Thrust. And this is a really cool card because it states, when you discard Quick Thrust from your hand, inflict your weapon damage to the monster. Pretty awesome. And again, because that was a discarded card, wasn't played in my sequence, it doesn't trigger anything that's currently in the behavior row. My total damage right now for this stance is up to 19. We need 24 to get past this stance. And the Outpace card that I just played is the one I'm hoping is going to deal a ton of damage, and it definitely is. It's an awesome card along with this too. So first off, we're going to take a look and know that we have a great sword that does 3 damage, so that's what we're doing to start. Then on top of it, it says deal 1 damage equal to the number of blue cards in your discard pile. So this is going to be a ridiculous amount of cards. We've got 1 here that I just discarded. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a crazy amount of additional damage. So 5 on top of the 3, we're up to 8. And because this is sitting right here, a red card is beside the yellow one, an additional 2, that's a total of 10 damage. And if that wasn't enough, an additional damage comes from the plant in the current sector I'm in, so 11 damage is going onto the monster. So with all that damage on the monster, we have a total of 30 damage which hit this thing. That's a massive, massive hit. So at this point in time, we've gone well over the second stance worth of damage we need to get, which is 24. 6 will remain in place as we discard the rest of the damage. We're also going to remove stance number 2 and all the peril cards for number 2, which in this case is just 1, and then move into stance number 3 and the peril cards for number 3. The last thing we need to resolve is what happens with the when revealed effect for the new stance number 3. It states, place a fire terrain on each threatened sector. Well, thankfully, both of our heroes right now are not threatened, so no additional fire being dropped down. You'll see now that the monster is completely vulnerable from all sides now, so we can hit this thing no matter which position we're in. Over here it states, when a player moves, discard the topmost card from the behavior deck. If that card has the claw trait, that player suffers 1 damage. So that was a truly epic attack. We got some big time damage on this monster, plus we're already 6 damage into the next stance amount that we need, which is 28. So at this moment, we only need 22 more damage to put this thing down. Time is starting to run out. We've got 1 hero on the ropes in terms of HP, but nobody's been KO'd just yet. And now we need to do some behavior reactions, and we have a red card that's going to trigger, and then after the red card, this icon right here represents when any other behavior is dealt with. You're going to flip that one. So we've got 2 coming at us. Quick aggression is the red card we have here. Not good. It says claw on it for a keyword. I think you guys will remember when I was reading the peril card where we're currently at in the stance, it stated on it, just for clarity, when a player moves, discard the topmost card from the behavior deck. If that card has the claw trait or keyword, that player suffers the damage. So not right now when we're resolving it as a behavior, but only when we move, and that hasn't happened yet. We haven't had anybody move since we moved into stance number 3, so we can ignore that claw. But this says the active player suffers 1 damage unless they have a yellow in their sequence. I do have a yellow in my sequence, so that's good. And actually it would have been an additional damage if that had been the case and I didn't have this yellow card in there. They'll still spend the struggle token though, which is nice. But ironically, we were completely out of behavior cards, so I had to shuffle the entire deck back in, add a card into the behavior area, which is a red, and when we go ahead and shuffle and replenish that deck, we are going to add another struggle token right back. So even though we got rid of one comes back anyway, and we have 1 more behavior card that would have resolved as a result of my attack, and that's this one right here. This one is called a Flamethrower, and the keyword is Firestorm, which doesn't trigger anything right now. It says place a fire terrain in the front sector. It's a good thing we moved out of this sector, because if our character had stayed in here while there was fire and more fires being placed, that's 1 damage straight through to Darian. Here's the good news and bad news. The good news is I don't get hit by that damage. The bad news is this fire is going to increase back up to red. The bottom of this card, for the behavior card we're resolving, states players in the front sector discard a green card from their hand or suffer a fire damage, and 2 struggle tokens are spent for this. Great news again, we're not there. The struggle tokens still get spent. This is a perfect card. Those are 2 perfect cards to get at this juncture in the game. And I'm going to decide right there to stop for Darian's turn. I have 1 card left in hand. We have to do our attrition check. We have 1 defense. Let's see what the attrition deck has for us. We are safe. We are just barely safe. So at this point, with 1 card remaining, we are not going to be able to take advantage of getting the extra stamina, unfortunately. We get to refill our hand. As you can see, there's only a couple cards left. We've got Reactive Guard, we have Tactical Maneuver, and we have Quick Thrust. So we're going to have to go ahead and reshuffle this deck right here and draw another card, and when we do replenish our deck, we take a damage for it. Deck has been replenished. Top card off is Timed Slash. The monster at this point is going to turn its attention to the aggro token. The monster has its focus on Darian. We're now moving over to Myra, who is definitely hurting on the HP side of things. Overall, I'm pretty excited for this upcoming turn with Myra because, well, she does have damage on her, but she's in a great space where she currently sits. She's in a location where there is a plant that can heal her for 1, so her damage will go from 6 to 5 right now. She also has an ability called Volley on her mastery way over there in the far right, so she'll be able to pull 2 cards off the top of the deck to see whether or not they actually land. Here's hoping we see some reds to start things off on a good foot. Yep, that's going to work. Long shot. So that is going to be the weapons damage of 2. Let's see if we can get another one because it's a volley 2. Oh, we did. We got 2 back-to-back. So that's going to be 4 damage going up against the monster. Plus, I remove a damage for healing before we decide whether we want to move. In order for Myra to move, I'm going to discard this card right here called Repositioning. It's going to get thrown in the discard pile, and she is going to move from where she currently is back over here. Next, Myra is going to use her potion, which, because this is a 1 on the attrition discard, this is going to allow her to heal up to 4. She only has a single point of damage left thanks to the plant that healed her for 1 and the 4 from the potion. She had 6 before, only 1 damage remaining. At this point in time, I'm going to discard Rapid Fire in order to get 2 stamina from her. That is going to allow me to play this one right here called Aim Shot. Aim Shot is going to inflict 2 damage, but also gets a volley 2, so I get to pull 2 cards off the top of the deck and see if I can add to this. I got a yellow. No, I want to see reds. Oh, still striking out on those, but 2 more damage will bring the damage level up to 12. One thing that I forgot to do when I moved with Myra is to go ahead and flip a behavior card from the top of the deck to see whether the claw trait is on it. And unfortunately for me, it is. So I've added an extra damage to Myra as I missed doing that the second that I moved based on the peril card. Thankfully, that just happened moments ago, but we're still not out of the woods yet. Because of my attack with Aimed Shot in my sequence, I now trigger the red behavior card. Looks like we got ourselves Dragon Wrath, and the Claw and Firestorm trait don't matter in this case. The monster immediately turns to the active player, which is Myra, and places a fire train in the front sector. No damage, because thankfully there's no fire there right now, so we'll just be placing a bright red fire token there. This struggle activation down below does not trigger because I don't have any struggle tokens on the monster to spend. So the monster is going to do a complete 180 and drop fire right at the foot of Myra. So at this point, Myra is going to stop playing cards into her sequence because she can't. The fire's now in her space. Unfortunately, I had a long-range card I was going to use. It would have been the last card in my sequence, which would have been the last card to go in the discard pile. That would have allowed me to stop any attrition damage coming through. Can't use it right now, unfortunately. Thank you, Giant Monster, for your friendly nature. And then I've also got this cover fire card that I'm going to hopefully use at some point in time. I can use it as a reaction when something bad happens in terms of attrition with Darien, so maybe I can use it in that case. For now, I'm stopping right here, so we need to check for attrition. Again, I have Zippo in terms of defense down here, so I'm going to be in for some pain. So that is going to be, and I didn't know if I mentioned this yet because it's the first time attrition damage has come through when we've been in stance number 3, but as you can see way over here in tiny number, which is out of focus at the moment, is 2, so the attrition damage has gone up. Discarded my sequence, and I've got 2 cards in hand, so that means I gain a stamina token, and I have 2 tokens to spend, but I have 4 damage on her. Again, that's not looking good. Halfway to dead. We're making a big time push here to end this, but we're also getting close to getting knocked out too. Going to drop some cards to find out what else we get. We got ourselves Catch the Eye. We have Backflip, and finally, Called Shot. So during Myra's sequence building, I only placed 1 card down. It was a red one. It didn't change the aggro token at all, which means right now at the end of her turn, when we check to see where the monster focuses its attention based on the aggro, it's going right back to Darien. And that's going to wrap up the end of turn for Myra's turn. Now we move into the end of round. The first thing we do, though, is if there's an end of round behavior card in the behavior row, which there is, we trigger that right now. Here is the behavior card with the hourglass on the back. That's the one that triggers at the very beginning of the end of round. Claws to trait, that doesn't trigger in this case. Players in the front sector immediately move or they suffer 1 damage. So the monster's going to turn to the player with the less. Okay, that'll happen afterwards. Yikes. And then down here, the requested movement must be paid with a 2 stamina card. If there's a struggle token, there isn't any to spend. So thankfully, we can just deal with the card up here. So players in the front sector immediately move or stay, or they suffer 1 damage. So Darian, do you need to move? Probably. You have 4 damage, just like Myra, so you probably don't want to add to that. So I need to determine where I'm going to move. The nasty thing is when I move here, the peril card for stance 3 right now states when I move, I then discard a card from the top of the behavior deck, and if it has the claw trait, I'm going to get hit by a damage as I try to run away. So seeing as we probably don't want to take that damage, I'm going to go ahead and do something a little crafty here. I'm going to use Quick Thrust. I'm going to discard this card so I can move, and then we're going to draw from the behavior deck to see if Claw comes up. But the cool thing by using Quick Thrust for my movement as a discard is when I discard this, I get to do my weapon damage to the monster. So that is going to be 3. We now have a total of 15 damage of the 28 we need to win the game. I'm going to go ahead right now. I've already replenished the behavior row because we finished with that card. I'm going to draw a behavior card right now to find out if the claw trait is on there as per this nasty peril card right here. So let's go ahead and find out. Yes, indeed, it is there. That's no fun at all. So I go ahead and suffer a damage while I try to escape and inflict damage at the same time. I moved Darian to this section up here because the fire is at its lowest. It will go away very soon, and I can heal up. The next thing during the end of round we need to clean up is the fire tokens. So these 2 fires will go down in their flames, and this one will extinguish completely. The fire's been dealt with. I've also ensured the aggro token was also paired up with Darian as it should be. And we continue to the next round. Round number 7, 2 struggle tokens back on the monster board, and also we'll be removing the lowest behavior card, which is the one on the far right off screen. It's a green one. This card right here is going to be replaced by this card instead. Going into this 7th round, this to me is crunch time. We currently have 5 damage on Darian. We have 4 damage on Myra, so we're definitely getting low on the HP side of things. We do have 1 potion left over here on Darian that he could use either on a character in his space or himself, and again, I really want to use that when the discard pile shows a 1 versus a 2, so I can get 4 healing back, which is what I'm going to be aiming for. But at this point in time, in terms of damage, we have 15 damage on the monster. We need 28, so we're a little over half, which is pretty good, and if things go our way, maybe we can make this happen by around the 8th round. Again, this monster probably has other plans. We're starting things off with Darian. He's the one with this aggro token on him way up top. And I've also removed one of the damage from Darian as he's in a space with that plant that heals at the beginning of his turn. So he's down to just 4 damage. So now both characters just have 4 damage, which is a little better. 8 being when they get knocked out. How do we want to go about moving? That is the question. If we do choose to move, we're going to have to go ahead and reshuffle the behavior deck, adding a struggle token into the pile, checking to see whether or not it has the trait of claw on it, and then of course taking a damage for that movement. However, it could be advantageous for us to move into this location to avoid putting a threat token on Darian and also taking advantage of the fact that there is a +1 damage there. Instead, I've decided, based on the fact there is a blue behavior card in here that can trigger, and Darian only has 4 cards going into his turn this time because he had to use some reactions from the wonderful monster during the last round. We're going to go ahead and place this one here. It's called Reactive Guard. Basically, I'm just placing it for its defensive value. I'm going to go ahead and discard a blue in order to gain a stamina to pay for that, so that's gone. And I'll do the same thing. I'll place another green down here. Both of these are going to give us things that I can't take advantage of in this turn, but it will give me the defense I need. So this other blue is being discarded with 1 stamina on it in order to make this possible. No aggro change whatsoever in terms of who's got that token. It's still on Darian anyway. We've got 2 defense. I'm literally stopping right here, so I didn't actually move at all. So I take that threatened token, which means we're going to go ahead and pull 2 cards from the top. I'm betting on my odds that a 3 is not going to be in here because there's more 1s and 2s. twos. Let's see if I got enough defense to just make this last. The only reason I didn't do anything crazy impressive with Daring this turn is I don't have many attack cards, and it's really too bad because the behavior of the enemy right now is wide open to attacks without any kind of behavioral retribution back at us. Right now, the real biggest problem is being in the front or the back of the monster or playing blues. So here we go. 2 cards off the top of the attrition deck. 2, okay, and hopefully I'm really hoping. Okay, good. We didn't see a 3, so that's good news. So I was able to block everything with what I had in my sequence. The other reason I didn't want to move is because if I choose to move, I got to draw a card from the behavior deck, as I mentioned earlier, and I don't want to go through all that kind of pain for not even an attack. I might as well just hold my ground. I'll have the threat token on Darien, but the good news is the next time he plans on moving, that will be removed. So now we're going to go into the end of turn. I have no cards in hand, so I do not gain a stamina token, but I get to refill my hand. So we get 5 cards. So I got Thwart. We have Momentum again, Outpace, that's a good one, I like that one. That's a really good one if we have lots of blue in the discard pile. I've used that a few times. And Empty Fade. So just so I don't forget this, I'm going to take the Threaten token, actually place it right on my character board. That'll help me to remember that I've got that state on Darien. Currently, right now, we deal with the Aggro token, which is at the top of the board. So the monster is going to turn to face Darien, and this is good and part of my plan to avoid triggering a behavior card at the start of Myra's turn. And that's going to do it. We can now move over to Myra's turn. Thankfully, no behavior cards triggering, as I mentioned. We are currently in a space with fire, so we decide if we want to move or not. The other thing to make note of is I do still have my burst ability, which is my mastery. Another thing worth noting is on cards, you are going to see, once you complete your mastery, this particular symbol. And I'll show it to you up close. It looks like this. And if you see this symbol, even on the cards in your hands, you can now take advantage of those effects. I haven't had situations where I've been able to take advantage of those cards just yet, maybe because I paid for them and discarded those cards, but we might want to use those effects to our advantage to take this thing down. It's another great bonus to mastering what you're doing in the game. So this burst card allows me to volley 2, so I'm definitely going to draw 2 cards right now before I move, because it happens at the start of my turn. We might get lucky and be able to place damage. Hope for reds, because that's what I want to see. Green. That's not going to do it. Come on, red, where are you? There we go. Finally, we got one. Okay, so that red is going to inflict 2 damage to the monster, bringing us up to 17. We're up to a total of 17 damage. We need 28 to take the monster down. I want to make a correction note right now, and that's regarding stamina tokens. At no time should you ever have more than 1 on your character board. Good news is, most of the time when I did have 2, which is the highest amount I've ever had in this playthrough, I believe I've only ever used 1 in those situations where I had 2. So we can quite easily just remove one of the stamina tokens away, and all is fine. I've removed 1 stamina from Myra's board, and also the last one I have here I'm going to use in order to move her out of her current position, which does have fire. We need to get out of there. So we're going to go ahead and throw that stamina away in order to move her from there up here. The second I do this, I need to draw a card from the top of the behavior deck. I don't have one. I need to reset the deck. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now and add a struggle token to the monster. Let's find out if the claw trait is on the top card. Here we go. Yes, it is, unfortunately. So it is going to go ahead and put 1 damage on Myra. So Myra currently has 5 damage on her. She's getting up there. I'm going to play this card. It's completely free cover fire. So this is going to allow me to do an attack with my bow for 2 damage. And I'm going to be able to volley 2 thanks to the bow actually having volley 2 stated on the bottom. We've used this before. I haven't been very successful in actually activating this ability down here on the bottom, but we're hoping from the top of the deck here we see some reds. Let's see how it goes. And I'm also trying to burn through this deck too, so it's another reason why I'm trying to get to the end of this, because I get 6 damage if I can burn this deck through. So yellow, no, and yellow, no. So no extra damage there, just the 2 damage getting through. We are up to a total of 19 damage on this thing, needing 28, so doing all right. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and play Backflip. This is another one that's completely free. It has a really cool ability on it as well. Not only do I get the defense, and again, there hasn't been any aggro change at all here. You play Backflip only after a red card, which I did. The next time you refill your hand, draw an additional card. So I'm setting myself up, plus also again trying to burn through this deck to get that 6 damage that I so greatly want. Okay, and then next up, we're going to go ahead and play this card, which is always a good idea, especially when your character's hurting, and that's long range. We've seen this one before. I need to pay a card in order to actually get this one out there. Again, no aggro change whatsoever. While long range is on the top of your discard pile, you cannot suffer damage from attrition. So I've got 2 defense, but regardless of whatever comes out of this thing, I'll be safe. So this is where I'm going to end my turn for Myra, because I have a blue card and I don't want to trigger a behavior card for no good reason. So we're going to stop right there. I don't have 2 cards in my hand, so I don't get a stamina token. At this point, I get to refill my hand, and this, my friends, is why it's all worth it. So we're going to go ahead and draw cards up. 1 card here, we got ourselves Evasion, draw 2. That's a pretty good card. And the last one here, we got Called Shot, and it does have that icon on it I was talking about for my mastery that could potentially help me out. Now we need to go ahead and check to see what my mastery does when it triggers. As it states on the mastery card, it's an extremely powerful one, especially if you had a high level weapon. It says when you draw the last card in your deck, which we just did, deal 6 times the weapon's level in damage. So in this case, it's 6 times 1, but it's still 6 damage. I am very happy with that. That was a crazy hit. We are so close. We only need 3 more damage to get through. Deck has been completely reshuffled, which means we place another damage on Myra, bringing her up to 6. She's 2 away from being KO. This is getting a little bit dicey. We're going to draw up the rest of her cards. She got Promptness, and last one is Catch the Eye. No red in there. Now, one thing I want to mention is that during my sequence that I played out just down here, the middle green card stated, the next time you refill your hand, draw an additional card. So we're definitely going to take advantage of that. We're also going to ensure the sequence we had out is discarded. So really, we're going in with 6 cards, and hey, there's that red card we need. The monster is still all eyes on the aggro token, which is right up here where both of our characters are currently standing, so it's not going to change position at all. However, at this point in time, there's going to be a change to the monster's behavior, and fires are going to be reduced. So these 2 fires are going away. The 2 low-level fires have now been extinguished. We're also moving into round number 8 as we get close to the end. We also are going to now need to add 2 struggle tokens to the monster board. So we'll be jumping up to a total of 4 there, which this could really come back to bite us if we don't manage that. Again, there was a reason I wasn't taking those away, and that's because there was a blue card on the monster board. But guess what? Right now, when we exchange out a behavior card for the monster, the blue one has the lowest number, so it's going to get discarded. The bad news is the one that's coming in from the deck is one that triggers anytime another one triggers, and we know based on where our characters are currently positioned, the Jaws one's going to trigger, and then that double one is going to hit us. The behavior cards are all sorted, and now we move into the action phase. Aggro token is on Darian. To start things off, we look for things like plants. Yes, he's in a space where a plant will generate him 1 healing, so he's definitely going to heal up, so he only has 3 damage now. But what also triggers at the start of his turn is a Jaws icon off the behavior card, which is going to be this first one. As soon as we resolve this, we then resolve the one beside it that triggers when another one triggers. It's going to be quite interesting to see how this all pans out. Frightful Growl. We remember this one from before. 4 struggle tokens being added to the monster for a total of 8 now. And it says here that the monster is going to gain attrition damage +1 until the end of the round, meaning it's going to be a total of 3 damage now going forward for this round. And the second one that triggers from the behaviors is Flamethrower. Firestorm trait means nothing in this case. Place a fire terrain in the front sector. That is going to cause problems. But again, at least we get to do our movement after this, but there will be fireplace in her spot. And 2 struggle tokens will be spent for sure from the monster, as the monster has it. And players in the front sector discard a green from their hand or they suffer damage. Lucky, lucky. I have a lot of green cards in Darian's hand. I had 3, so I picked this one here, which is actually a duplicate of one I've got in my hand already, whereas on Myra's side, she literally only had 1, but still, we're safe. So now we can take a big breath. We survived those 2 behavior cards. Now I'm going to go ahead, being that we have a discarded 1 in the attrition deck, I'm going to use my potion here, and it states on it I can use it for myself or somebody in my space. And instead of using it on myself for just 3 of the 4, I'm instead going to give it to my friend Myra, who's going to heal up from 6 damage down to 2. Darian's going to go into full hero mode here and does not care about the peril card that will trigger when he moves. He's going to go ahead and move. So we're going to discard 1 card. He's going to move from where he currently is to this sector right here. We'll go ahead right now and draw a card to see whether or not anything happens with the claw trait. Yes, it does. 1 damage will be coming through. Darian's going to use that to his advantage. That last hit just made him extra angry. And he's going to go ahead right now and start laying down a sequence. He's going to use Thwart. He's going to discard this for the 2 stamina that he can get for it on the bottom in order to play Outpace. And that's exactly what Darian did by getting around to the flank of the monster. This card states, because we've paid it, the aggro token will move, which it already has. This is going to allow me to do a damage of 3, and that is going to do it. That is all we needed to do in order to take this beast down. We got a total of 28 on the dot. And with one final determined strike, Darian kills the beast. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the playthrough for Primal The Awakening from Reggie Games, landing on Kickstarter January 19th. I really hope this helps you make an informed decision based on the gameplay and the game flow you saw, the setup, the unboxing of the prototype components, and just know, if you're looking for more information on what this game entails beyond what you've seen here, you're definitely going to want to check out that Kickstarter page. All those additional details and updates throughout the campaign and afterwards will fill you in on the development of the game and also the additions to this game that you didn't see as part of this playthrough. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.